On this day, January 17th, 2026, a moment stands before us like a gate in time, a appointed moment, a crossroads. For some, it may appear like any other day on the calendar, but in the patterns of God, in the mysteries of the times, there are moments when heaven presses upon the earth. Moments when what is hidden is brought to light, when the heart is weighed, and when the soul is called to rise. My friends, this day is not here by accident. It is a test, not to break us, but to reveal us, not to condemn us, but to awaken us. For every generation faces its own trial, its own refining fire, its own summons from God. And now, the question stands before each of us. What will you do with this moment? Will you bow to fear, or will you rise in faith? Will you cling to the shadows of yesterday, or step into the calling written for you since the beginning? Today, we stand on holy ground disguised as ordinary time, and the test before us is not meant to destroy, but to transform, to call forth courage, to call forth clarity, to call forth the destiny that God planted within us before we ever drew breath. January 17th, 2026, the final test is not about the world, it is about you, your choices, your strength, your faith, the future that waits on the other side. Let us begin. A divine test reveals identity, purpose, and inner strength. Many live their lives believing tests are moments of struggle, seasons of hardship, or circumstances that press the soul until it bends. But a divine test is something entirely different. It is not simply a trial of life, nor merely a challenge of circumstance. It is a moment crafted with intention, a moment placed in time by the one who sees beyond the surface, beyond the present, beyond what we have become, and into what we were destined to be. A divine test is a mirror, not of human effort, but of the truth of who we are beneath the layers of fear, habit, and self-protection. It reveals not what life has made us, but what God placed within us from the beginning. And January 17th, 2026 stands as such a moment where identity is revealed not through words, but through the choices of the heart. Identity is not the name you carry, nor the title assigned to you by society. Identity is not the sum of your successes or the weight of your failures. Identity is the truth of who you are when everything else is removed. It is the imprint of purpose carved into the soul before you ever took your first breath. And yet, for many, that identity has been buried under expectations, buried under disappointments, buried under the wounds of the past, buried under the demands of the present. So the divine test comes to lift the coverings, to remove the layers, to expose what has been hidden, not to shame you, but to call you back to yourself. For every human being carries within them a truth far greater than the roles they play. A divine test brings that truth into the light. A divine test reveals whether you have surrendered to fear or to faith, whether you have allowed the world to define your value or whether you have embraced the value placed upon you by God, whether you have been shaped by the storms you pass through or by the purpose for which you were created. The test does not come to break you, it comes to unveil you. It comes to show you what has been waiting inside you all along. And though many see a test as a threat, the divine sees it as an unveiling. For the truth inside you is often larger than the life you have been living, and a test is the tool that brings that truth to the surface. Purpose is not something discovered through luck or ambition. Purpose is not born from convenience or comfort. Purpose is forged in the fires of choice. It is awakened by moments that demand courage. It is revealed when the soul is pressed to decide whether it will remain in the familiar or step into the unknown. And no one steps into purpose by accident. Purpose appears in moments of tension, in moments of decision, in moments when the heart is confronted with what it fears most. It is in those moments that the question arises, will you shrink or will you rise? Will you cling to what has always been or embrace what could be? A divine test reveals your answer, not because God does not know it, but because you must see it for yourself. For the truth is this: most people live not according to their purpose, but according to their patterns. Patterns shaped by years of doubt, Ament and delay, patterns formed by comfort zones that feel safe but slowly suffocate growth. Patterns shaped by voices from the past that said, "You cannot, you should not, you will fail." And though time moves forward, many remain stuck in the same circle, walking the same path, repeating the same responses, living the same inner story. A divine test breaks the circle. It confronts the pattern. It exposes the excuses. It reveals the truth that the prison was never the circumstance, but the belief you carried about yourself. A divine test exposes the difference between who you are and who you have allowed yourself to become. It reveals the gap between the identity God gave you and the identity fear has shaped in you. It calls out the smallness you have accepted. It challenges the limitations you have embraced. It shines a light on the lies that have whispered to you for years, convincing you that the dreams God placed in your heart were too large, too distant, too impossible. The test does not expose your weakness to harm you. It exposes it so it can no longer rule you. It reveals the lies so truth can replace them. It reveals your fears so courage can rise. It reveals your wounds so healing can begin. And inner strength, true inner strength, is not found in the absence of difficulty. It is not found in titles, possessions, or reputation. Inner strength is not the armor you wear. It is the fire that burns within. It is the capacity to stand when everything around you tells to fall. It is the ability to believe when logic says to quit. It is the courage to move forward when your past tells you that you are not enough. Inner strength is not built in comfort. It is awakened in challenge. And a divine test awakens that strength, because without it, you cannot walk in your true identity and you cannot fulfill your purpose. But strength cannot be awakened until weakness is revealed. Purpose cannot be embraced until excuses are confronted. Identity cannot be reclaimed until lies are exposed. So the divine test comes, often quietly, often unexpectedly, often disguised as a simple decision. Should you stay or should you move? Should you surrender or should you rise? Should you fear or should you trust? And though the test may appear small, its impact is anything but small. For a single choice made in truth can alter the direction of an entire life. A single act of courage can break cycles that have lasted for generations. A single moment of surrender can open doors that have been closed for years. A divine test reveals whether you will take that step. The world teaches us to hide our weaknesses, to mask our fears, to present only the image of strength. But a divine test strips away the image and reveals the reality. It allows you to see that your weakness is not your enemy, but your opportunity. For strength is only meaningful when it rises from a place of struggle. Courage is only real when it faces fear. Faith is only alive when it stands against uncertainty. And purpose is only fulfilled when you step into places that require you to trust beyond your own strength. So the test comes not to expose you to shame, but to expose you to truth. Because truth is what sets you free. Identity is revealed when you choose to act according to who you truly are, not who life has told you to be. Purpose is revealed when you choose to take the step that scares you because you know something within you was created for more. Inner strength is revealed when you face the voice of fear and choose to move anyway. These revelations do not come in moments of ease. They come in the tension of decision, in the silence of introspection, in the stillness where you must confront yourself. They come when there is no audience, no applause, no praise, only truth. A divine test often appears when you least expect it, because if you could predict it, you would prepare for it in the same way you prepare for all things, by controlling the outcome. But God does not want your control. He wants your surrender. He wants your honesty. He wants the version of you that is unfiltered and unmasked. He wants the heart that is willing to admit its fear, yet step forward anyway. He wants the soul that is ready to release the old identity and embrace the one written for it from eternity. So the test comes in moments that feel inconvenient, uncomfortable, or uncertain. And it is in those moments that your true identity is revealed. There are people who believe they know themselves because they know their personality, their preferences, their habits. But personality is not identity. Preference is not purpose. Habit is not destiny. Identity is the truth of who you are in the eyes of God. Purpose is the reason your breath continues. Destiny is the future your soul was created to walk into. And a divine test reveals all these things because it strips away everything else. It reveals what remains when status is removed, when comfort is shaken, when illusions dissolve. It reveals the core of the soul. And what is that core? For some, it is courage that has long been suppressed. For others, it is a dream they abandoned because they believed it was beyond reach. For others still, it is a truth about themselves they feared to face. A divine test brings all of it to the surface. It brings you face to face with the person you were created to be. Not the one the world shaped, not the one fear molded, not the one circumstance carved out of pressure, but the one God formed before you lived a single day. That identity carries purpose. That purpose requires strength, and that strength is awakened through the test. Many look at the test and see threat, but heaven looks at the test and sees opportunity, opportunity for breakthrough, opportunity for revelation, opportunity for transformation. For a divine test is a doorway, and the only thing you must carry through that doorway is truth. Not the truth you speak to others, but the truth you speak to yourself. The trut, H about your fears, the truth about your strengths, the truth about your calling. And truth is the key that unlocks both purpose and destiny. And so this test, the one hidden inside this moment in time, is not a test of knowledge, but a test of being. Not a test of performance, but a test of identity. Not a test of outward strength, but inward surrender. It does not ask, what can you do? It asks, who are you? It does not ask, what do others say you are? It asks, what has God spoken over you? It does not ask, what has life made you? It asks, what were you created to be? For identity precedes purpose, and purpose reveals strength. The test reveals them all. January 17th, 2026 stands as a reminder that the greatest test you will ever face is the test of identity. Will you live as the person shaped by pain or as the person shaped by purpose? Will you walk according to fear or according to faith? Will you shrink back into what is safe or rise into what is true? A divine test reveals the answer. And once the truth is revealed, you can never return to who you once were because the unveiling has already begun and the call to rise has already been spoken into your soul. The shaking of life is a summons to rise, not retreat. Life in all its seasons often comes with shaking. It comes with tremors beneath the surface, storms on the horizon, winds that threaten to unmoor the foundations we have built. For some, this shaking appears as a sudden loss, a door closing that should not have closed, a relationship faltering, a career derailed, a health concern arising, or a dream slipping from grasp. For others, it is slow, gradual, an erosion of what once felt solid, an incremental weakening of certainty, a quiet questioning of the assumptions that guided their path. But whether sudden or slow, the shaking carries a divine purpose. It is not a punishment, though it may feel like one. It is not a warning of defeat, though it may seem like a signal to stop. It is a summons, a call to the soul to awaken, to lift its eyes above the turmoil, to recognize the moment for what it truly is. A call to rise. The world teaches retreat. The world teaches caution. The world teaches that when foundations shake, the safest path is to cling to what is known, to step back from risk, to protect oneself from further harm. And in many ways, those lessons are sound in matters of convenience and comfort. But the shaking that comes from God, or the shaking that comes as a divine summons, operates under a different law. It does not call for avoidance. It does not call for retreat. It calls for response. It calls for rising. For within every shake, every tremor, every quaking moment, there lies a hidden opportunity, a seed of awakening, a chance to see beyond the familiar, a moment to recognize that life is not merely what happens to you, but what is happening through you. The shaking is designed to reveal truth. It exposes the illusions that have masked reality. It lays bare the structures that were never strong enough to hold up under scrutiny. It uncovers the pretenses that you have held on to feel secure. For years, many walk through life believing that stability comes from accumulation, money, titles, relationships, reputation, possessions, but a shaking strips all of that away. And when all that has been relied upon begins to waver, the soul is faced with a choice. Will it collapse under the weight of uncertainty? Will it retreat into fear and self-preservation, or will it rise into the hidden strength that has always been there, waiting to be discovered? The shaking is not a signal of weakness. It is a revelation of the hidden reservoirs of strength and courage that lie dormant until challenged. The shaking also tests perspective. The human eye often sees only the immediate tremor, the immediate threat, the immediate disruption. But life's shaking is not merely about what is visible. It is about what is invisible, about the currents beneath the surface that are shaping the trajectory of your soul. In the midst of chaos, when the ground beneath you seems unsteady, the test is whether you will see the hand guiding the events around you, whether you will discern the lesson in the disruption, whether you will trust in the unseen order behind apparent disorder. Those who rise in these moments do not simply survive the shaking, they emerge transformed, refined, sharpened, and prepared for the path that lies beyond the storm. Fear is the natural response to shaking. The instinct is to retreat, to shrink, to protect, to avoid. But fear is not the final word. Fear is a tool, a signal, a messenger, not a ruler. When life shakes, the choice is not whether you feel fear, but what you do with it. Will fear dictate your actions, or will faith direct them? Will fear become a wall that confines you, or a mirror that reflects your hidden courage? Every shaking is an invitation to confront fear, to face the uncertainty, to step out of comfort and into the reality of what you were created to endure, and ultimately to rise above circumstances that appear insurmountable. The shaking also clarifies priorities. In the midst of disruption, the things that were once considered essential often fall away, leaving only the true anchors of life. Relationships that were superficial reveal their fragility. Ambitions that were hollow prove irrelevant. Fears that were unexamined come to the surface. In that clarity, a choice emerges. What will you build upon? What will you cling to? What will you rise for? And in recognizing the priorities that truly matter, the soul finds its compass, its orienta, and its courage. The shaking is not chaos, it is a realignment, a recalibration, a real moment of divine clarity. It is also in shaking that resilience is born. Resilience is not the absence of struggle, but the presence of strength in struggle. True resilience comes not from avoiding challenges, but from encountering them, from standing firm when the winds howl, when the foundations tremble, when the world appears unstable. Every tremor you endure without surrender strengthens the core of who you are. Every moment in which you choose rising over retreat builds a foundation not subject to external shifts, a foundation grounded in internal truth and divine purpose. The shaking does not break the soul that listens. It strengthens it, hardens it, sharpens it, prepares it for the calling that waits beyond the immediate disruption. The shaking also teaches patience. It reminds that timing is not always our own. It reminds that the unfolding of life often occurs according to laws beyond what we see, according to patterns we cannot always discern, according to purposes that may be hidden until revealed. In the midst of shaking, it is easy to act impulsively, to flee, to seek comfort at any cost, to make choices based on fear rather than faith. But those who rise see that patience in the shaking is strength. They see that waiting with purpose, waiting with awareness, waiting with a willingness to act in alignment with what is eternal rather than temporary, produces outcomes that are past immediate expectation. The shaking is not simply a test of endurance. It is a lesson in divine timing, a summons to trust in the unfolding order of life itself. Shaking also exposes dependency. It strips away the illusions of self-sufficiency. It confronts the ego with the reality that no one controls all outcomes. No one can secure every circumstance. No one can prevent every disruption. And in that exposure, a choice arises. Will you cling to independence at the cost of isolation? Or will you recognize the sources of strength beyond yourself? The guidance, the wisdom, the unseen hand, the divine provision that sustains you, even when everything appears unstable. To rise in shaking is to recognize that true strength is not independent but interdependent, connected to the forces of purpose and destiny that operate beyond the visible. The shaking reveals character. When the world is steady, anyone can appear strong. When everything is secure, it is easy to project confidence. But the tremors of life reveal the true nature of a person. In moments of difficulty, the mask falls away, and what remains is the authentic response of the heart. Will you rise or will you retreat? Will you cling to truth or bend to expediency? Will you face the unknown with courage or hide in what is familiar? Every tremor is an opportunity to choose the path of integrity, to demonstrate the courage embedded within you, to allow character to rise in proportion to the magnitude of the challenge. This shaking also strengthens faith. Faith is often theoretical when life is calm. It is easy to speak of belief when the winds are gentle, when the skies are clear, when the foundation appears unshakable. But faith is awakened when the ground shakes, when circumstances defy understanding, when certainty is lost, and all that remains is trust in what is unseen. The shaking is a clarifying moment, a proving ground, a forge in which faith is purified, strengthened, and made resilient. Those who rise in the shaking discover that faith is not a luxury, but a lifeline, a power within that transcends circumstance and becomes the anchor that allows the soul to stand firm. The shaking is also a call to courage. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision to act in spite of it. And shaking, by its very nature, produces fear. It produces doubt. It produces the urge to retreat. But the summons within the shaking is always toward action, toward stepping forward, toward rising, toward the assertion that you will not be defined by disruption. The test of courage is not revealed in calm but in storm. It is revealed in the tremor that threatens stability. It is revealed in the moment when comfort calls you back, but purpose calls you forward. To rise in the shaking is to affirm that courage is greater than fear, that destiny is greater than delay, that the soul's calling is greater than circumstance. The shaking also demands adaptability. The foundation may tremble, the structure may shift, the circumstances may change beyond recognition. And those who rise do not cling to rigid expectations. They do not attempt to force the past to remain as it was. They adjust, they pivot. They align with the reality before them. They recognize that life is dynamic and that survival alone is not the goal. The goal is alignment with purpose, clarity of vision, strength of heart, and the willingness to respond with wisdom. To rise in shaking is not to resist change, but to navigate it with integrity and courage. Shaking also invites humility. It reminds the soul that no amount of pride, no accumulation of accolades, no external power can prevent disruption. Humility in shaking is not weakness, it is awareness of limits, recognition of dependence, openness to guidance, willingness to learn, and the realization that strength rises most effectively when it is tempered with understanding and perspective. The summons within shaking is always toward a balance of courage and humility, of confidence and discernment, of action and patience. To rise is to navigate this balance in the face of trembling foundations. Shaking is also a teacher of perseverance. The tremor does not end in a moment. Often it continues, testing patience, resilience, and endurance. Those who rise do not give up. They do not abandon the journey. They do not allow temporary disruption to define permanent outcomes. Every step forward, however small, is a declaration that the soul will endure, that purpose will prevail. And that rising is possible even when retreat seems safer. The shaking becomes a proving ground in which perseverance is forged, strengthened, and refined into unyielding determination. The shaking often reveals priorities that were hidden. It strips away what is non-essential. It removes the illusions of permanence. It uncovers the heart's true devotion. When all that is superficial falls away, what remains is the essence of who you are and what you truly value. The summons in shaking is to act in accordance with these priorities, to let go of distractions, to focus energy and attention on what matters most, and to rise with clarity of purpose. Every tremor is an opportunity to realign life with the deeper calling embedded in the soul, and so the shaking is never meaningless. It is never accidental. It is never random. Every tremor, every storm, every disruption carries within it a summons to rise. It calls the soul to awaken. It calls the spirit to courage. It calls the heart to clarity. It calls the mind to discernment. It calls the life to alignment with purpose. It is the voice of a reality greater than the immediate circumstance, a calling higher than fear, a pathway beyond retreat, and a summons toward becoming all that was intended. Those who recognize this, who respond to it, who act upon it, discover that shaking is not destruction, but revelation, not punishment, but invitation, not chaos, but guidance, and that rising is the only fitting response. This moment demands courage, clarity, and unwavering faith. Every person who has ever faced a pivotal point in life knows that there comes a moment when the ordinary is no longer enough, when the familiar no longer satisfies, when the world seems to demand a response beyond the ordinary measure of human ability. And January 17th, 2026 is such a moment. It is a moment set apart, a point in time that carries weight beyond its calendar date, a moment that asks of every soul a response not born of convenience, not born of safety, not born of hesitation, but born of courage, clarity, and faith. It is a moment that tests the heart, examines the mind, and challenges the spirit. It calls for the awakening of a deeper strength that has always existed within, a strength that has been tempered by experience, refined through trial, and sustained by purpose. To face this moment is to confront the reality that life's most important turning points require more than planning. They require a posture of readiness and openness to divine guidance, and a willingness to act when action is demanded, even when the path is uncertain. Courage is the first call of this moment. Courage does not mean the absence of fear, for fear is the natural companion of any situation that challenges the known and demands the unknown. Courage is the willingness to step forward in spite of fear, to act when hesitation tempts, to speak when silence offers comfort, to move when the ground beneath seems unsteady. Courage is not a single act, but a continuous posture, a daily choice to rise above doubt, to confront challenge, to resist retreat. It is forged in the fire of experience, tested in the trials of life, and revealed in moments when the stakes are high and the outcome uncertain. This moment, like all moments of true consequence, demands courage not in abstraction but in action. It demands that you face your fears, confront your weaknesses, and step into a space where your faith and resolve are the only anchors capable of sustaining you. Clarity is the second demand of this moment. Life is often filled with noise, distraction, conflicting voices, and the relentless pull of countless responsibilities. In such an environment, clarity becomes rare. Clarity is not merely knowing what you want or what you desire. It is the deep, unshakable awareness of what is true, what is essential, what aligns with your purpose, and what calls forth your highest potential. Clarity is the lens through which courage becomes effective. Without clarity, courage can be misapplied, misdirected, or wasted on pursuits that do not advance the soul's calling. This moment, January 17th, 2026, strips away the superficial and demands that you see with unclouded vision. It asks that you discern the difference between fleeting distractions and eternal priorities, between the fleeting applause of the world and the lasting voice of destiny. To act without clarity is to risk wandering. To rise with clarity is to navigate with purpose. Faith is the third requirement of this moment, the invisible yet undeniable force that sustains action when human understanding falters. Faith is the assurance that what cannot be seen is still real, that what cannot be measured is still powerful, that what is beyond comprehension is still guiding. Faith is not passive belief, but active trust, a decision to rely upon a source beyond oneself, to commit to a path even when the path is shrouded in uncertainty, to act in alignment with divine truth even when human logic offers no certainty. Unwavering faith is not tested in times of comfort. It is revealed in moments of challenge, when the ground shakes, when the familiar dissolves, when the heart is tempted to despair. This moment calls for faith that is not tentative, faith that is not conditional, faith that does not waver with circumstances. It demands the kind of faith that roots the soul, strengthens resolve, and sustains action through difficulty and doubt. The combination of courage, clarity, and faith is transformative. Courage without clarity can be reckless. Clarity without courage can be inert. Faith without courage or clarity can be abstract. But together they form a tripod of strength upon which the soul can rise. They allow you to step into the unknown with confidence, to act decisively in moments of ambiguity, to face adversity without surrendering to fear. This moment demands not a fragmented response, but a holistic one, a response that engages the mind, heart, and spirit simultaneously. It calls for an alignment of understanding, resolve, and trust. For without this alignment, even the best intentions can falter, even the strongest impulses can misfire, and even the noblest purposes can remain unrealized. This moment also demands perseverance. Courage, clarity, and faith are not fleeting, they are sustained. The test of this moment is not completed in a single action or decision. It is revealed through persistence, through endurance, through a steady commitment to act in alignment with truth over time. Challenges will not cease immediately. The shaking of life, the opposition of circumstance, the tests of patience, the distractions of the world, all of these continue to press. And it is in the continued engagement, the refusal to retreat, the determination to rise again and again, that the soul discovers the full measure of its strength. To meet this moment is to embrace a discipline of response, a daily recommitment, a repeated decision to act in courage, see with clarity, and trust with unwavering faith. Moreover, this moment requires self-awareness. To rise effectively, one must recognize both strengths and weaknesses, both resources and limitations, both potential and vulnerability. Courage without self-awareness can become recklessness. Clarity without reflection can become rigid. Faith without understanding can become blind. Self-awareness allows the soul to act with discernment, to marshal its resources wisely, to anticipate challenges and to adjust strategy without abandoning purpose. It allows courage to be applied in the right arenas, clarity to inform the right decisions, and faith to sustain the right actions. Without self-awareness, the call to rise may be misdirected or incomplete. With self-awareness, the response becomes precise, intentional, and effective. The moment also demands resilience. Courage, clarity, and faith are tested through trials, not in calm. Every step taken in alignment with purpose encounters resistance. Every act of trust faces challenge.